Have to be a meeting of-
I think it's been there. I think that was in the commercial industrial.
All right, it is 6:01, and I will call the Dalton Township Planning Commission meeting for September 24th to order. First up, we have roll call. Dave, I'm here. Jesse? Here. Todd is excused. Casey?
Here.
Lee? Here. Kevin? Here. And John is excused. All right, the agenda, anything to add to that? Okay,
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have the approval of the minutes for September 3rd, 2024. Anyone see anything, any corrections or? That will just be signed by Todd at the next meeting?
I'll reach out to him and have him
Okay.
come in and sign or sign electronically.
Make motion to approve this September 3rd, 24 minutes.
Support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we will open up public comment at 6:03. And as we have no public, we will close it at 6:03. Nothing for public hearing tonight. We have some communication from the township board meeting minutes and the zoning report for August 2024. No unfinished business, and we will move into new business. We have a couple of discussion items. First one is on shipping containers as accessory buildings in residential districts. Steve, you want to tell everybody just a little bit about what it is that kind of brought this forward?
Yeah, so a gentleman called and asked if he could, he wanted to do a container, but he wanted to put a roof on it and side it. At that point, only the door would be exposed and it looks like a normal stick built. The strict application of the ordinance would mean that it wouldn't be allowed. I just thought I'd reach out and see what you thought, whether that was a can of worms we don't want to open, or if it's something that, as long as it doesn't look like a shipping container, it would be appropriate.
Thoughts?
I feel like that could get out of control really fast. And turn into more blight cases than we can handle. But, I mean, in this specific instance, it sounds great. He's using it as a shell to make it look like a stick-built unit. But,
Not everybody's gonna side it and roof it, and
right,
it's gonna look like a steel box, I get that.
Then to get into all of that, what do you have to do to the exterior? Do you have to cover it? Do you have to paint it? Do you have to, I don't know if there's anything, the roof pitch, all the other usual stuff?
Personally, I don't know. I mean, if we followed the same guidelines as outside storage, recreational vehicles, where it was in the rear yard space. I mean, front yard and our rear yard. I mean, as long as we don't have them sitting out by the road in front yards. Why shouldn't a person be able to use a steel storage container versus a shed?
Right.
There's also considerations of, is it gonna be in
Neighbors
downtown Twin Lake, or is it gonna be,
Right.
in the middle of a 40-acre parcel?
In which case, I have major issues with anything restrictive, especially in a case where somebody's got 40 acres and they want to do something. That shouldn't be anybody's business, but in Twin Lake, in the front yard. So I would vote for administrative approval and then it's all Steve's fault if somebody said that was a dumb idea.
Like if it's-
But, you know, it's kind of a tough one.
You guys want to use it for just storage, was this thought?
Yeah, it'd be same as a shed, it just wouldn't. It'd be constructed out of a shipping container, but it wouldn't look like a shipping container.
Right.
Is that something where it ceases to be a shipping container at that point?
Right.
Because if you were to pull a permit, pull a permit to stick build a shed, and then swaps this in, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference, except for maybe the door.
I just don't think it is a shipping container at that point.
So at that point, it's.
My house could be built out of a shipping container and none of you would even know.
I know we've had that conversation.
What are the
Homes
sizes of
built
those?
out of them.
Are they like 20 or 40?
It's like 8x20.
8x20, 40.
Okay, so as it sits right now, it's steel shipping containers, personal storage units, moving pods are prohibited in all residential districts.
And the potential for them being over the size of a non-permitted shed is there if they're 8x40.
Yeah, that would still mean, if you didn't have any accessory building, generator, running around.
Right, so to build a, what is it, over 200 square foot shed, you gotta have,
It still has to have a building permit.
so if you get a big box, then we're gonna have a permit because it's bigger than the 200 square foot rule. You know what I mean? For security, I think they're the best way to go. We have a heck of a lot harder time breaking into one of those than you are a wooden shed.
I guess I don't understand why it's. I see some people, don't like the looks of them or whatever, but I would say I don't care where they're put them, I open it up. I mean, yeah, Lake District, you're probably not gonna put it up there, that is.
Oh, when
Maybe restrict that.
When you do, you're gonna rile up a lot of people, they're gonna burn down Township Hall.
Like, put it on, I don't know, I think it's put it on river, but I don't like the restriction of it either. Having that you can't put it up, I mean, it's pretty easy building, or pretty easy storage.
Well, the
Like
thing
instead of
is,
building a unit.
you can be limited on where you can put it because of the equipment, you have to bring it in, so it's not like.
It's never gonna stop raining.
Today,
I don't know what happened.
I don't know, that's a really tough one. I like to have the approach of no rules, but
Guess what's the downside of having people
That's what I was gonna say.
bring them to their home anyway, other than some people don't like the looks of them.
Just more neighborhood disputes and more just people complaining and coming into Township Hall and just complaining. That's the only downside, I think.
It's no different if it was a regular shed, I mean, if it blocked vision or do anything else, if you're in the, it's all the same.
Yeah.
well, then you'll have the one guy that just wants to do it because that guy's not gonna like it. And he's gonna say, well, I can, so here you go, stick it.
I mean, you could just do that with someone else anyway too, like
Yeah.
build a big old welded up middle finger or something, who knows, like. Yeah,
Right.
and that'll probably.
Are you contemplating doing that?
No, I'm just,
Just thinking, right.
people are just gonna, if they wanna be an ass, they're gonna be an ass.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of a lot of money to be spent, I guess people have been better.
Yeah.
The availability of all the steel shipping containers at one time, they became pretty inexpensive to get them, and I don't know about moving them and all that.
They're not inexpensive now. They have lost so many shipping containers that we try to get products shipped, like for the campground, and shipping times are insane right now because they don't have enough containers. They wait at the Port of Long Beach for them to empty and they turn them right back around, like, so
that's out of the.
it'd be hard to get one anyway.
So if you do get one, you probably get one that's been decommissioned.
Yes, exactly.
So then you have an issue with,
But you still see them for sale on Marketplace for $3 to $4 grand, and look at what you pay for a new
I
shed.
still have them, yeah, they're out there.
Their past mini barns can get over $5 grand easy.
But if someone wants it on their property, who am I to say no? I mean, but they'd have to comply with a backyard, you know, not as a, I mean, there's all those. And if we gave it to Stephen as a approval, it becomes a lot simpler for the person. The thing is, I don't want them to have to go through any more of these inspections or, you know, ridiculous, just because it's a,
I can, just offhand, I can think of a couple of people that would probably put one in their front yard. Because of the things I see them doing already. And that would be where Steve would have to go.
Well, outbuildings are already prohibited in front yards, I believe, right?
yeah.
So our
Accessory.
It's what side,
Unless,
side and rear.
Yes.
unless you're more than 200 feet from the road or something like that.
There's a lot of rules that they
Right.
still have to comply, whether it's, you know, steel or whether it's a regular. There's setbacks, like you said, no displacement of water. Well, that's, I mean, that's all, I guess.
Allowed accessory buildings.
But I'm glad he's not here in one sense, because I don't wanna ask the question, because then we're getting into somebody else's business, like it's not our business to know.
Well, and it might be the guy that just wants to shove it way over in the corner and make it look nice, not the guy that's gonna have it looking like a big turd. But for me, it's like, let's say yes, we can do it, but Steve will have some guidelines that he's gonna have to say, this is what you gotta stay within. I just think we're restrictive enough as it is, and forward, I think we need to peel that back.
Is it good for, like we're saying, is there any, would there be any areas that we would say you cannot do it in? And then again, we're getting picking and choosing, so I don't know if that makes sense. Because if you're doing it on the lake, you're not gonna put it on your back, I mean, you could put it on, because the backyard is really the front yard. Right, so you could end out on,
Lake District.
what's that?
I would say no to the Lake District.
What's our reasoning though? I mean, if someone takes us to court in the Lake District, what was our reasoning behind that? Is that just another arbitrary thing that it's put in the book that no one knows why they did it? Like, what would be our reasoning? If they comply with everything,
Protection of aesthetics and property value.
so we don't care about other people's property value? I'm not sure I wanna say that. Like R2, some of the R2, the houses are really close
But I think
together. like-
R2, I think if we had a limit on the lot size,
Okay,
I think lot size is a more reasonable.
that's way more like, instead of just saying, Lake District, we care about your property values, this is way better, like, oh, because you could eliminate probably 99% of the Lake District by picking a lot size that you can't have them on or something like that.
Yeah, so basically, if you can't build an X square foot of garage because they don't have a lot of space for that, why would you be allowed to have that? Sort of.
Are we going down that direction of finding ways to say yes, or is it better to say do nothing and leave it as is?
I mean, part of me feels like just because one dude wants to do it, that it's not necessarily worth it. There's so much else in the book that little tweaks that could be fixed, like, do we need to spend our time on this? But I don't know, because I don't know the history of how long it's been in there or how many more people have been affected, but I'm inclined to, if it's one person, to be like, you know, is it really?
Throw it on the list.
I just don't feel like his even qualifies. I just don't even feel like he has a shipping container. Who knows what's underneath there?
So when he signs it, at that
Right.
point, it ceases to be a shipping.
Right, exactly. Like when you're making, I don't really care. I don't know what the shell of this is. I don't know if this is a steel building underneath or if it's wood framing. Like, I don't think anybody really knows that, except the building inspector, I suppose. It's big enough, but I think at that point it ceases being a shipping container. It's just a shed. It's just an accessory building.
I agree. But I still think that when this stuff does arise, that's the time when you have an opportunity to make it less restrictive and find a way to make it work for people.
I'll kind of move forward operating on the premise that if it's sided and roofed, it ceases to be an accessory building. Or it ceases to be a shipping container and becomes an accessory building.
Correct, just a
In
standard
accordance with
accessory,
ordinance.
right,
I will, I would like to get an opinion of maybe an opinion of the attorney, just to see if that's defensible. But I think it's reasonable.
At least we're making an effort.
Yeah, as far as other people using them, I mean, I don't know, like 1 acre lot minimum or something. What's required in R1, I don't. They met the other requirements of accessory buildings, I mean. I can see where Casey's coming from, that it could get out of hand, I can agree with that for sure, but I don't know.
it may
Then
not,
again, I don't
you
see
never
lots
know,
of people just buying them just because they can now, right?
right,
I mean, they aren't even. And if they gotta meet the setbacks and everything else, I don't know, I mean. I guess I don't see a lot of people that, you know, I could see some maybe grabbing one here and there if they knew they could, but I mean, a lot of people. Don't like them already, for example, they're not gonna put them, they just don't like them, because they're not going, or if they did, they're gonna. Paint it and paint some, they'll put a couple shutters on it and it'll look good.
a lot of people probably feel really trapped by a steel shipping container, cause like, you know how often people change their minds, you get it set there, and then like a year or two later, you're like, I really wish it was like 30 feet over and turned it, and so you can't do that easily with a steel shipping container, so I think some people probably, that's why we may not hear a lot of people wanting one, is they're not that flexible.
Right.
Now, it's probably gonna be your people that wanna put their bombs in there and their ammunition.
Don't they do that like in a bunker underground?
Does that sound like a direction then, you're gonna check with attorney?
Yeah, make sure that interpretation is good and that.
Everyone okay with that?
Yeah. I still like it to be more open, but I guess they'll check it out. I don't really care that much.
Next time we have a pressing ordinance amendment, we could
Put it in with that, exactly, yep.
revisit it and have that conversation.
Yep.
That makes sense. All right,
Since you're talking about it, let's do it now.
Find something else to change too, though, please.
Somebody take out.
Yeah, it's fine. We gotta remove something then.
in that case, we would just take out,
Maybe it would take something out, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it would take out that whole section. 4.2, what else is in 4.2?
Well, like 4.2 is accessory
Oh, I got you. Tough.
accessory building, this is just I and J. 2018 is something like that. They added I and J portion.
and then if you did all districts, then make it a lot size of it's 1 acre, so, I mean, again, everyone, that sounds like a reasonable,
If it follows the same guidelines as something else that's relatively comparable, like a garage or an outbuilding.
How much does an accessory building or whatever actually affect somebody else's property? Like assessed value,
I mean,
somebody
it's-
buys like,
yeah.
by a realtor or whatever, I mean, if somebody's gonna sell, they could sell that shipping container, get it out of there, and have more value for the house. And then they technically raise the next person's property, right? You can get more money because comparables,
I think
it's a group argument.
part of the reason for it is also it's an industrial piece of equipment, if not, maintained or
Yeah,
dressed up. And so you kind of have that, piece that's out of character. It could be borderline blight. If you just let a shipping container sit there and rot. It's gonna rot Oh, it's rust.
Right, yeah, I know, what you said, yeah. Yeah. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't think we should try to encourage blight, but I, there's probably just about as much chance as your shipping container looking like garbage as your siding falling off your shed. I mean, so
Right.
I'm sure that
Right.
one doesn't really matter.
You can get an old metal shed and falls apart, doors off.
People maintain it
caves
properly,
in.
they don't.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
it's nice or it doesn't.
Yep, they do or they don't.
So I
I
mean,
think we should be just that.
that was kind of the suggestion then for I and J, omitting that then?
Well, I think J was for the industrial zones or something like that. Commercial industrial zone districts. I wanna change it. Just get rid of them or whatever.
Yeah, so shipping containers in J, commercial and industrial, they're just subject to site plan review. Because when we did, site plan review for Darwin on, Industrial Drive, he had a shipping container that he approved on that site.
Right.
We treated it like any other accessory building.
Commercial, it's materials stored within the containers are subject to review of the fire chief. What the heck?
What about in your garage?
Yeah, I mean, like,
Maybe because it can get hot in there.
I got my Tannerite teepee in the backyard.
They do get hot inside. I've been locked in on for weeks and that's not fun.
You gotta have a parcel of 1 acre or larger.
I
don't
just
know.
kinda add all of them. Has the stuff in it. And that's what I would consider as an accessory building. Different.
And we'll definitely hear from the public if anyone is against those, they'll come for the public hearing that make a change if that was something that sticks in the crowd. Probably like most people, they're gonna go, "You wanna do that?" But, you know, somebody would, and if they do, their choice.
Everybody, I think when those public hearings come out, everybody's like, oh, my neighbor would never do that. And then like 2 years later, they're like, man, I kind of wish I would have gone to that public hearing because my neighbor's doing that.
I've seen them stacked. Like, well, they'll take one and put it on top of the other. I've seen that on,
HGTV.
yeah, like one of those main cabin masters or whatever, they made a thing like that. Man, but it was a lot of work. I mean,
No one's ever seen it. Can't cry.
really?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So I as an omission?
That could change.
If that's the simplest way to do it.
And then it's an administrative approval?
Yeah, but if we get rid of I outright, there's no minimum, no minimum lot size, no siding requirements or anything like that. It's just
You can put a shipping container somewhere.
a shipping container anywhere you can put an accessory building.
That annoys me though, because now you have this like 50 pages worth of stuff for what you can do in a commercial and residential district or a commercial and industrial where it really doesn't matter. And we're just saying in residential, you just have at it. But if you're in commercial, please follow our 7 or 8 things. And have the fire department come and look in your container. But if, as long as it's on a residential parcel, you're fine to do whatever you want. That seems a little bit too much.
Because it's commercial, people can't be trusted.
Oh, yeah, yep, business owners are all just
Maintenance of the community. See that point too. Point of having an inspection. Insurance companies. Fire department. Whoever wrote this book had restrictive nature.
Well, I think we did this in the last couple of years, I think.
Yeah, it says 2018 somewhere.
Yeah, right here in this, said section 4.2 I and J added. Hold on.
Yeah, I remember adding it in there.
I'm just gonna keep going back to, is this even a problem? Like, is this even a thing that we need to be sitting here wasting time? Like, let's rewrite this about shipping containers, because one guy asked in the last like
Well, I, yeah,
8 years.
it sounds like he can do what he wants. It's
Yeah,
not a shipping container, and that's
right.
that's essentially why I brought it. Is can you do it? If not, is it something you want to change?
I have heard people ask before, and I've had people ask me, and I'm like, no, I don't think you can. And they're like,
Right.
why not? I don't know. So, in that case, I say, yeah, and if it's good for commercial and industrial, why can't it be good for everybody else? If we don't wanna have all the inspections for
Yeah.
commercial and industrial, then why would we have it for anybody else? So it's like, tax the whole thing.
Right. Yeah, you can reduce a lot of it. You could just say this needs to meet requirements of accessory buildings.
Even at that,
I mean, if you got a pre-built shed, you'd have to do the same thing, correct? Has to meet the accessory building.
Right.
Requirements.
Right. Right, setbacks,
treat it the
side
same.
yard.
You could put the same thing in that accessory building that you could in the container, and then fire department don't have to inspect that. I don't know,
That's what I see it as. I just see it as something, you put something in.
too many
I
hands on
understand, yeah, sometimes they don't look the best.
There's a lot that just could get simplified right there. You, I mean,
You said before, if somebody wants to make it look nice, you can make it look nice. I would, if that one, I'd be painting thing, and want it to last longer than. So.
is this a, we want to do something or we? Could eliminate a lot of that page probably.
I think the way Lee said it's probably the best way to look at it. Just treat it like an accessory building and open for whoever. So we had reason to stop regulating accessory buildings, and then that'll be fixed.
Thoughts on that? Reduce the page.
Would there be any reason for it to come before the planning commission then? It's an accessory building, you can do accessory buildings, correct?
Yeah, it meets the requirements for an accessory building.
So we don't have to see them and the fire marshal doesn't need to go out.
It doesn't say you have to, it just says it's subject to. So someone will give them a call and say, hey, they're storing napalm in there next to the lighters.
I think we're making
You
that
can
up.
send someone to check it out and make sure it was safe.
Is it a certain size that it requires? Does it come to here, accessory building or building? You remember?
No, if it's commercial, it's required for a site plan review. If it's
Residential, it's just
residential, accessory buildings are permitted by right,
zoning,
administrative review.
administrative approval.
Sounds
I mean,
pretty
if you, this is the thing, that you guys, you're all very short-sighted. Right now, it talks about storage sheds in a manufactured home district. And it talks about one storage shed, it has to be durable, weather, rust resistant, it has to be this, it has to be that. Like, there is so much restriction in here right now that, I mean, there's other pages we could be working on if you guys really want to make things. Cause I don't understand why it has to be not larger than 144 square feet. It has to be 10 feet from adjacent home. Like, why are we calling all this out specifically in the RM
Yes.
district?
I think that's just in a trailer park.
Okay, but why do we care what people's sheds are in a trailer park?
Do we even have any anymore?
We do not.
We can probably just get that right out of there. Fixed
The issue is we have to have
provisions.
provisions for one legally.
We can work on that. We want to, but we don't have any, so that would be a true waste of time.
Yeah, we don't really have any storage container issues either, except one dude in 8 years, so.
We do have several containers in the township that could potentially be regulated, but if we say we're not doing that, then we'll find where we're at.
So we come back to,
Why don't you just for now, just get the, if the guy decides it, if we could just deal with this one guy. Because if the attorney says no, that still would be a thing, then we know we have to make changes, I guess, if we wanna help this one guy out. But I don't know.
sounds fair. Do that? All right. Got that one pretty well taken care of. Discussion item reviews by the township engineer. One of the things Stephen had mentioned in here, are there any things, everyone's thoughts on whether there are projects, any projects that you foresee wanting to have a township engineer review before making a decision?
Proposed larger scale projects engineered a firm in the first place. Yes.
Yeah.
Diligence on our part to have somebody go over that to make sure that they're following the right engineer parameters. That was-
Probably not. I mean, engineers are bound by professional ethics and they know things that you don't even believe that, oh, you can't do that. Oh, you can't do that because there's a code for that. Oh, you can't do that. Like, I can't even imagine anybody who's paying for an engineer is gonna already have, they're gonna be told things they wanna do that they can't do because of some building code or something, or some ADA code or something. So I'm not sure it's in the township's best interest to pay an engineering firm to look over another engineering firm's engineered plans.
Well, is it, I mean, in some cases, I have heard that want to have your engineer look at this, not theirs, because they might try to take a loophole, or is that what we're looking for, is another layer of protection?
Yeah, so we're just looking at 4240, I'm not seeing. Stormwater management, water sports parks. Or must be my. What's this stuff?
Or 2E, that's a section,
Oh, in. Gotcha.
so that's the section pertaining to private roads. Which it specifically calls out for, review by the township engineer to verify, because I'm not qualified to inspect a road.
The inspectors aren't either.
Yeah.
I will tell you.
Thank you, thank you.
They're not.
They're not, they don't have a clue.
Two at a time.
You better hire a good excavator if you want your road to actually work. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, and I did read somewhere where in our qualifications for a private road, an engineer had to sign off that it was built to the specification, but it doesn't say what kind of engineer or special licensure of an engineer, it just says an engineer. So are those the cases where you're gonna,
Yeah, so it's the method of construction and technique has to satisfy the requirements of zoning administrator, township engineer, fire chief, and any other agency having jurisdiction. The ordinance requires us to have a township engineer that's working for us give us specifications that make sure that it meets, that they're satisfied with the road.
Who are we trying to protect from whom?
I think we're trying to protect a little bit of everybody, ourselves, the people using the private road.
How would it hurt the township if a private road wasn't constructed properly?
Primarily fire.
Well, then why
I
can't
would
the
say-
fire chief just drive out there and be like, dude, I can't turn a fire truck around? Like,
because he's not an engineer.
But if it's not constructed properly, like if the materials are not right, he can't, he's not gonna look at the materials, he's gonna look at the turnarounds and access points. But he's not gonna look at the materials and say, oh, yeah, we need more 22A slag here.
Right.
Not gonna say, no, that's not the right kind of sand, we need a different kind of sand there.
Right.
Whereas if we had, it's essentially having someone on our side working for our best interest.
Are there engineers who specialize in that? Is that what you're going for? Is it?
There are.
Okay.
And I spoke with one last week that I do like, but I'd like to have an RFQ sent out just to compare and
So in
make sure we're getting.
a corporate setting, don't we typically have different engineers and contractors that are vetted, and you know that they're understanding your processes and what you're looking for, and the township could say, we're vetted with X engineering firm, you can get your sign-offs from them, but they don't necessarily have to be employed by us. They just know our expectations, and
They would be employed by us. They'd be working for us.
But these couple of projects are just new private roads.
Yeah, just new private roads.
Yeah.
That's essentially, since I'm putting out an RFQ, I just wanted to run it by you and see if there's anything you foresee
I can understand both sides.
you wanting to.
Yes, I mean, some developer goes and dumps in a private road and put some garbage material in there, just good enough to sell lots, and then all the homeowners are stuck with junk road that they need to improve now. I mean, I can see that side. The other side I've personally seen, which can turn into a real mess, and Casey's may have seen it, I don't know, but for example, with the drain commissioner, she has a engineer like you're talking here, you know, to oversee certain projects and whatnot, you know.
And it all goes through him.
Correct. And so then, and we experienced it on one of our projects several years ago, that, you know, there gets to be too much of an inside relationship. And then that township engineer, or what, in this case, the drain commission engineer, is charging exorbitant fees because he charges by the hour, and then he makes your engineer redo stuff and redo stuff and redo stuff just to run his bill up, and nobody recognizes it. I'll give you an example. For example, it was, I mean, I've worked with the guy, but you know, he had a fee of $4,000 for a final inspection and never came and did it. But he had to be paid in order to get our final occupancy. So that stuff can get out of control really fast, where they'll take advantage of an owner that doesn't know, and then it's just needless expense, you know, getting passed through this contract that's gonna end up just costing the homeowners more money. They could have just fixed the road. I don't know. That is one thing to
Yep.
consider, I guess.
Well, if you get a site plan for a private road and it specs MDOT class 2 and it specs at 22A, then, I mean, that's it, that's what you're approving, like that, it's supposed to be that, like, you can never truly prove, there is no engineer on earth that can come out and be like, oh, yeah, that's this and not that, because there are aggregates
They're
that
not
are
gonna
so similar that they would never know, and unless you take, like, in order to certify our piles for MDOT class 2, they have to take a sample of it. So are we now expecting that a township engineer is gonna take a sample of what was poured out on the site and make sure it's, I mean, other than it being on the print, like, in holding people accountable to that, like, right, you're already agreeing to,
do what it says to do in here.
right, it already tells you in the
Verifying
ordinance what you have.
Yes.
Verifying is not as easy as you think.
Unless you have load slips that say this came from McCormick or Accurate,
Right.
it was 22A and it was class 2 and that sand.
Yeah, I think honestly, that would be more,
But Steve's trying to follow what's in here now,
Yeah,
right? So that's where he's kind of come, because it's saying that we need to have a township engineer.
it's basically, hey, I'm in the process of pursuing a township engineer. Is there anything, since the ordinance says you guys can require it if you feel necessary determination, is there anything you foresee needing a determination on? Like needing an engineer's perspective on before approving? Yeah, I couldn't,
It could be just kind of a case by case basis, I guess.
I couldn't think of anything specific other than private roads, but you guys have all seen more planning commission applications than I have.
I just don't wanna see us spending tax dollars on another employee.
And that's something that they would be billed for an escrow account. So they would cover the fees of the engineer as part of the permitting process.
I just hate to see us suddenly require our township residents, oh, you get this engineered by the engineer that you trust and you've been working with forever. And now we have to also look it over and go back and forth between two engineers, because you can put 10 engineers in a room and not, the 10 of them will not agree on how to do anything. And
Right.
I don't know, it's just gonna be more money for people who just want
Or
to.
is, I guess I'm trying to follow, so are you just trying to look to have somebody on board, Steve? That
Yeah, just have
if
someone
we
ready
say
to
we
go.
should really have an engineer look at this because it's beyond us, then you have somebody on board, is that, you're not saying every private road?
As of right now, every private road does need it. if they're building a new private road. I'm looking at having some firm where I could say, how much is, provide me a quote for this specific project, how much is it gonna cost to get through?
Wouldn't it be easier if we just took out the requirement to have a township engineer sign off on the final project? If someone's giving us a site plan and it says like
They're saying
they're
they're
following the ordinance and it's on the print that they're following the ordinance, why, like, they're supposed, if somebody ever finds them out of compliance, then, I mean, they already are. Like, I mean, they're on the hook for it because they already said they were gonna do it. I would rather remove the layer that requires a township engineer.
It's just more.
If we're trying to be more permissive and now we're gonna hire an engineer to like oversee people's projects, like a road. Like they're the ones driving on it. I would hope that they would hire somebody reputable and hold them to a certain standard rather than us getting involved in their project. Like, it's a private road. Like, I don't understand. So my tax dollars have to pay for a township engineer to review somebody's private road?
No, it's through an escrow account.
Oh, they're covering
Yeah,
the.
they have to pay the fee for they have to cover any cost incurred by the township for the review.
Right.
So they're paying all of the fees.
More fees,
It's
more
about
fees,
this,
more
about-
fees.
That's basically having a second engineer check the work.
Right. The developer would do or whatever.
How about we just make a list of engineering companies that can't do prints at the township? That'd be a shorter list. I mean, honestly, the engineers, they have all different opinions and stuff, but they all come from a somewhat reputable, like, I mean, they're professionals, they're licensed professionals. I can't imagine you hire this company and they're so bad that the township engineer's like, oh, I actually found something in here they're not doing that right, like.
Well, in one respect, we have a building inspector for buildings, we have electrical inspector for electrical, plumbing, heating and cooling. We don't have anybody to inspect substructures or infrastructure like what we're talking about. So I guess in that respect, I can understand it. As long as it's not a township employee and the project itself is paying for their money.
Correct, it's not, the taxpayers are not paying, they're not subsidizing any of the development.
Right.
The developer's paying the costs.
More of a nuisance for people who do know what they're doing, but for people who don't,
And it's also because the engineer could sign off on it and say this is how it's supposed to be built. But it doesn't matter if the person who's building the road doesn't
Right.
build it the right way.
that part I get.
Yeah, that's tough when I mean, less is more.
Yeah. It's hard to sit up here and be a reputable company that would never do these things and get in someone's head to think of like, oh, an engineering like to think that an engineer is actually gonna save somebody from something, like.
Right.
We've been on jobs so many times where the engineer's on site the entire time and still don't see things that should be corrected, that are found by our job foreman instead of the engineer who's standing there staring at the hole. I just don't think hiring an engineer is gonna make sure their road is built correctly but I don't know, especially once it's done. So he's signing off on it. I don't know how at that point he knows anything about the sub base, whether it was compacted correctly, anything, but
It would be inspected at each phase of construction.
Right. Which we haven't done up to this point that I'm aware of, anyway.
What if
But I'm not,
what if you're in the case where it's not fair to the contractor to have to pay a second engineer when they are certified road builders? And they know what they're doing and the standards are being met?
There isn't any certification. I will tell you that.
Oh.
0.
Well, I'm just saying like, okay, so these two companies are represented right here. You might find a guy that's new that doesn't
Yep.
follow all the same standards and doesn't
You might,
do things to a T. And he might shave an inch off of that sand.
yeah.
He might shave an inch off of that aggregate, just to save themselves some money.
Yeah.
And it's never gonna get inspected, nobody's ever gonna know.
Correct.
That's what this layer of
Right.
protection's for.
Right.
But it
But it's
shouldn't
also, I'll
be-
also tell you, that's how every private road out there gets built. It's how every school gets built. It's how every layer gets built. There ain't no inspector out there.
No,
That just gets blown.
exactly.
So it's integrity.
And most companies have a 1-year warranty. If your private road starts falling apart, then the contractor's on the hook for that. And
And I'll tell you, I mean, the stuff has gotten, I mean, like Casey said, I mean, it's gotten bad. The worst thing I've seen yet is we did a section of Hackley this summer and it was an MDOT project. And these kids, I'm not telling you, these are kids out there that were supposed to be inspectors. They're not inspectors. They're
they have a college degree though. But
I
that's all
don't
they
even
need.
know if they even have that, because MDOT got really fired up at that firm because these guys weren't even qualified to be on the job, yet they were on the job and they were our inspectors,
Yeah.
yet there's 3 of them there. I have no idea what they were charging, say Muskegon Heights, but we had to show them how to use their compaction machine, to check the compaction. You know, we had to tell them what we're doing to them because they don't have a clue. And you start throwing thousands, it's bad, I'm telling you, it's bad. And I can just see it getting. I've never even built a private road in the township, but
But if you get those tool bags out there and inspecting.
I can just see it cost people a lot of money
Yep.
and not doing anything.
Not actually helping any situation, to which I'm not sure there's a problem to begin with, because obviously private roads have been built in the last, like, I don't know, 10 years or so. And to my knowledge, no inspector, no engineer has ever inspected any private road. And this has not been any sort of
Not
issue.
if they were just doing it directly for the developer, you know, if a developer, a lot of times if the developer hires his engineer to put roads in, you know, and then the developer will hire them.
Yeah, to
Oh,
protect
yeah.
themselves from a
Right.
claim later on and say, oh, well, here's the compaction test,
Right.
so, sorry.
So I could see why you would wanna do that. I mean, I get it.
Yeah, I do too.
It's not an apprentice in soils and structures. You're gonna want somebody who's the real deal.
This just can quickly move from what seems like a good idea to the seedy underbelly of the industry.
But it's really doing the right thing.
But we really found that this one would be, it has to be done on every private road. We've got to do this so far. But we haven't,
It never has been. I don't think.
I don't think we've had any new private roads in a while. There was a.
It seems weird to just tell township residents, yeah, you're putting, these people in your neighborhood are putting in a private road, so you need to pay the township to make sure, the township's gonna protect you. You have to pay the government extra money to protect you. Can't you just protect yourself? Like, when did it become the town? When did it become the township's job to hire a guy, even not at taxpayer dollars, to protect people building private roads from hiring a poor contractor?
Well, I think it's more of the perspective of the township is allowing this person to put in a private road. And now the township is saying, we're gonna do our due diligence to make sure that it's done right for the people that are gonna live in it. That's
Right.
the impression I'm getting, but
the gentleman who
Kinda like
came
a
here
building
before,
inspection.
Right. I see what you're
You
saying.
anticipate a licensed residential builder to build it as spec'd by the architect or designer.
Yeah,
that gentleman who
But they
came
don't
in
always
here
do that.
that was having the private road done, he had already collected money from certain people and it was, so in that, would they then need to collect the money up front for the fees? Or would that be
part of the permit, right?
part of the permit?
That wasn't. That was one that wasn't required to go through this step because it was already in existence
Okay.
and they were upgrading the existing.
You have any kind of idea or gauge yet for what the possible cost will be added into a private road permit for the inspections?
I don't.
and to compare it to building and plumbing trades and stuff, it's not even in the same realm. Like, what danger is it if your private road like fails or you have a problem with your private road? What danger is it if your house collapses on you or if your plumbing scalds you? Or, I mean, there's lots of, that's totally a safety issue and you're enveloped within that house. So if your electrical catches on fire because it was done shoddily, but please tell me how having a private road not be certified by an engineer could cause you physical harm.
Well, you could end up with a private road that looks like Hazel and all these other pothole 2 tracks up in Lakewood Club.
Yeah.
It could be impassable to emergency services. Given,
Right, but so we're gonna hold the road commission accountable for their roads?
No.
Because many of those are impassable to emergency services. I worked on an ambulance for 6 years, let me just tell you that private roads are probably the least of our problem. Those people seem to have the most like care and consideration for because it's theirs and it's not a public thing, but there were many public roads that were completely impassable. Driving down the side, trying to get through.
So at this point, you are moving forward with this to meet those two
Well, yeah, 'cause
requirements.
it's in the zoning ordinance, so he pretty much has to.
And so you have to do that part, so there's really nothing else we're gonna ask. I can't imagine so far, like off the top of my head, I can't think of any reason we'd say, we'd like our engineer to look at it. That sounds like such
But
an
now
easy
it sounds
hammer
like
to
it
swing.
is in the zoning that it has to be done for private roads.
it does happen.
Right, so automatically we're starting something that we've never done before. It's been in the zoning, but now we're cracking down on it.
And I don't believe there have been any private roads, new private roads built
Okay,
since the housing crisis.
what do other townships do about, do they have an
I
engineer?
guess technically, I can do technically, I guess, but I don't know if they're considered private, I guess. There's one over there, what's his name, but I don't know if that's private road.
That's a private driveway.
Private driveway.
He's
Because it's
currently
only accessing him, okay.
And that is one I would not issue that permit again because it goes through public access spaces.
Oh.
Don't worry, they did a great
That-
job.
yeah.
They would pass the township inspector.
But I mean, that's one where the issue is it's on a private, right on a public right of way.
Public right of way.
Driveway on a public right of way.
Oh dear,
It's a very odd
So
deal.
it's an odd deal.
it's a
And I was,
public-private partnership.
I think it was my first month and the rain said it was okay. So I'm like, yeah, it's probably fine. And there's no issues with it, but if anybody else wants.
I mean, all it
to
ever
build
was
on
was a 2-track, I mean, it was a 2-track and now it's gravel on it.
Yeah.
But if anybody else wants to build on it, they would have to go through this process of upgrading it to an actual road.
Yeah, so I guess it was the same thing across the street from Mike, I guess it's considered, it was a private drive, but it was down a county easement.
Oh, yeah.
But like, what does
Yeah.
White River Township do? What does Flint
I can
Township?
look into them.
I'm not
Well-
interested really in Muskegon Township. They're a little bit bigger than us. They probably have a township engineer on staff.
I'll look into all the surrounding
Okay.
as well as some more.
But ultimately, all it does is add cost to the contractor's permit that's building the drive. Not anybody
Well,
else.
residents, I guess, like,
Fine.
And I'm sure it gets passed on to whoever buys the lots or the
right.
houses.
And this is more for developers, I mean, like, I guess it could be,
Well, if you haven't had any private roads in
Or
10
you
years,
could
you
just
probably
build
don't know
private
who's
road
building
and
private
lots.
roads.
which I guess might be.
Well, the ones coming up, I guess, yeah, are they development type things or are they private neighbors wanting to like parcel?
They're developments.
Okay, they're all developments, okay.
So, I can ask that when the camera's on.
You should ask it. If it's in a public forum, it should be.
Oh, no, this is just a nosy neighbor thing. I saw an engineering group the other day, SME, right down the road from us. It looked like they were doing some boring out in the field. I just didn't know.
I know they have the high voltage down to the communications tower. That typically doesn't need local permits.
Maybe that's what it was.
So Stephen will move forward with his process here for that, those two things listed. We're not gonna add any more at this point, which that sounds like the best way to go. Is that correct?
I would give it that ordinance.
How hard it can be for just.
And I'll look into the rationale behind that, as well as see what other municipalities do.
Yeah.
What's, advisable from a legal standpoint as well, because it's,
Right.
again, we're potentially liable if we approve it. And if we have an engineer do it, they would take on that liability.
Yeah, no, they won't.
And if they have insurance to take on.
Sure, we have insurance too. But no, I mean, if you're approving a plan that calls out certain things and it's in, obviously whoever wrote the zoning ordinance researched what the proper way to build a private road is, put it all in the ordinance, like, it should be easy to cross-reference without us taking on liability or anything.
Right. Yeah, because it clearly says what it's supposed to be.
Right, so if,
I mean, that if it's saying, if anything it ties into the county right away, they're gonna expect
us to make sure it's built right.
All right.
All right.
Or did you follow?
I'm just not about having the government out checking to make sure after I paid $30,000 for a tiny private road.
All right, well, that moves us on to our final thing in our.
Haven't already said it.
Okay, Kevin has made a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? All those in favor say aye.
I
Opposed? All right, we will close the meeting at 7:03.
That's that.
At their discretion, the professional engineer may require additional inspection at any time.
Oh, and they will, they will.
Oh, yes, they will. They